Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'm just going to say hi to everyone in the chat. Dushan, hello. Rich, hello. I'm glad you could stay up. You let me know if I need to send you a link. Otherwise, if you're happy to watch. Uh, MJ, hello. Piroli, hello. Adam Karayani, good to see you. Eric, good morning from Melbourne. And I guess it's good evening from what part of the US are you in, Ryan?
I am over in Pennsylvania outside of the Philadelphia area, so East Coast.
So it's evening there now, about 6 p.m. or
Yeah, 6 p.m. 6
yeah,
p.m. So still light outside, but things are starting to wind down.
yeah,
I had
long.
an early dinner before this stream.
Okay, we've got our other guest waiting to come on, so I'm going to put Henna on the stream to say hi to everybody. Oh, hello.
Hi. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, what is that?
There's like drilling literally right underneath me. Let me mute myself for a second.
Okay, all right.
Tragic.
So, guys, first of all, thank you both very much for coming on the stream. We've had this kind of in the works for a couple of weeks, and I'm glad that we could make a time that everyone could be on. Just to let the people, is this going to be a problem, Hannah? Just to let everyone watching the stream know, we haven't decided on any particular topics to talk about on the stream. I always, and Ryan, I don't know if this happens to you and Hannah, when I do live streams, I always spend 15 minutes before it starts thinking, what am I going to talk about, and how am I going to, you know, think of anything to say, and then before I know it, 2 hours have gone past, and I really don't have any idea. Um, but what I do know is that I think we've all brought along some stuff that we've been sampling or are about to sample, and I've got a ton of stuff that I can talk about. And we can start off there, and then if anyone's got any questions in the chat, happy to answer them. I'm sure Hannah and Ryan are happy to take questions.
Oh yeah.
But first of all, I guess we can do the obligatory scent of the day. Mine is, I don't know if you can all see that, Tabak Vert by Rogue Perfumery. Actually, I'll spray some on now because I haven't sprayed any on. I just decided to wear this. It's so good. Have you tried this, guys?
Oh yeah.
I have not.
Yeah, yeah,
I love it. That's my favorite from Rogue.
yeah. Agree, agree. Of all the ones I've smelled, anyway. Um, all right, looks like you got rid of your
So
noise problem, Hannah.
for right now, so I'll jump in while there's no drilling. I have headphones in too, but it's like literally like I can feel the floor. I wore Umbra by Aqua di Parma,
Ah,
and yeah, I just talked about it last week because I don't reach for it as much. So since it was out, I wore it.
Oh, that's very nice.
It's
It's been a while
really
since I've smelled that. I had a sample of it at one point in time. I recall liking it. Do you like it? Or are you just catching? I assume you do.
no, I love it. I love it. I wear this all the time.
I and what was yours, Ryan?
Mine is Bottega Veneta Por Home, the original.
EDT.
EDT. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's now discontinued, unfortunately. But for me, it's just like one of those really nice modern daily driver fragrances. It just kind of strikes that nice balance between classic and interesting in just the right way. I don't know. This feels to me like I've sometimes said that I think like this is kind of what if Blue de Chanel had been made to my tastes, like, and Chanel had come out with like a mass pleasing fragrance that was made in a way that I really could enjoy it. This is kind of that. It feels like every occasion, any day, sort of like masculine, but it has more interest than like a blue fragrance would, with all the
Oh,
green,
definitely.
the leather.
I used to have a bottle of it, Ryan, and I mainly remember how nice and clean that piney leather was. Like it was actually like almost to me it came off almost like a fresh leather fragrance, and I get what you mean by comparing it to how you would want Bleu de Chanel to smell, I guess. And Hannah, I want to get back to um, Aqua di Parma. First of all, I have an admission to make, and I'm not sure if this is well. I mean, I think it's surprising for me, but Aqua di Parma, for whatever reason, is a house that I've just managed to not test like extensively, and it's available here. I can try them all in department stores, but and it's not like I don't like what I've smelled. I just it like for whatever reason I always get distracted by other brands, and I'm sure if I took some time to try them and test them properly, I would love them. I do want to say though, have either of you two tried the one I did remember liking was Aqua de Parma Futura, Futura. I really
Yeah,
like that one.
the Colonia Futura. I haven't tried that one. That's one of the. That was a few years ago. I recall when they came out with that, because that was the one that was like mostly natural ingredients or sustainable ingredients. That was why it was the
Okay.
Parma Colonia Futura of the future. I haven't tried that one, but I've heard very good things about it. And yeah, I like Aqua di Parma. I think what's nice about Aqua di Parma, and I say this could be a backhanded compliment, but this is the truth. Like they have such wide distribution that they're plentifully available at discounters. So like it's just very easy to pick up an Aqua di Parma fragrance at a substantial discount, and they have a pretty broad range of scents now in their catalog. So some of them I like more than others, but it's hard to argue with, especially from like discounters, the value you get from Aqua di Parma. And some of their fragrances are quite lovely. I'm a big fan of their leather, Pep, and I think you might like their leather too. It's a great kind of like single-minded, dry, dusty, sort of like Italian leather kind of feeling. That's really, I don't know. I wear it all the time.
I might get people to make suggestions for their favorites for me to test, and I like it'll be easy enough for me to get some samples. But I was going to say, Hannah, I remember trying the Umbra when um, last year, about this time last year, and I only smelled it in store. But what I do remember was thinking that it didn't smell like an amber to me. Like that's what surprised me. So the fact, so sometimes you see amber or umbra or ombre in the name, and you just have an expectation of what it's going to smell like, and that's what was surprising. But it was a pleasant surprise from memory. I just don't remember enough about how it smelled at the time.
Yeah, and I think Umbra is supposed to be ambergris, right? So
Okay.
it isn't their version of an amber; it's an ambergris accord that they use. And so yeah, I think like that surprise is intentional on their part. But to speak to what Ryan was saying, I feel like first of all, like we can get so much at discounters now. Like Frederick Mal was at Costco last week, right?
That's true.
So like I mean, there's like what is sacred these days? I don't think anything is off limits if you just wait long enough. And like part of the thing is they have a bit of an identity crisis. Like they keep reinventing themselves. They have this new collection out. I don't know how much it is there, but here it's $777 for a bottle, which like okay, so they're trying to level up, right? They want that customer, but now all the old stuff is going to be at discounters, right? Like so I don't know. I think their perfumes are really good and really well made, but I think that's why we can find them at discounters.
I think that's true, and I think it's true. Ambra. just to is definitely that sort of a very nice ambergris accord, and I like it's very rare to find fragrances that lead into that in a very like focused way, and that is a pretty nice one. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm getting a lot of good suggestions for Aqua di Parma to try, so that's on my to-do list. I wanted to maybe I'll kick this off because yesterday I got a bunch of samples that I only ordered last week, and they were all things that I've been wanting to try for a long time. And I think Rich basically kicked this off because he suggested that I try one of the new Healy perfumes called Cologne Officinal. I think that's how you pronounce it. So I figured I would ask, and I'll tell you what I've got here, but I'd ask you guys what new samples you guys have recently acquired, because I've also been sent a bunch of stuff, and I know I've mentioned all the vintage minis that I've got from Anuj. I also have a bunch of Chronotope perfume samples, and I know I don't know if he's on the chat at the moment, but Keith from Manly Scent sent me some really nice vintage perfumes that he recommended I try. So I've got so much to get through, and it's going to keep me busy for the next 6 months at least.
I'm very slow to go through samples, so my sample drawer is deep and intimidating at this point. But what I've been going through, I recently ordered, and if you're curious about my thoughts on it, I won't go into it on the stream, but Écrine de Fumée by Serge Lutens, and with that, I got some Serge Lutens samples. So
I do want to hear about it.
You do want to hear about it? Okay,
yeah.
So Écrine de Fumée, I mean, the long and short of it is it's the least interesting Serge Lutens tobacco fragrance. By some measure, it's not bad. It's kind of a more conventional, slightly like more conventional designer tobacco style with a bit more woody booziness on top. And
is it mass appealing? Is that what you're trying to say? It's like very mass appealing.
It
That's
is
okay.
It is mass appealing, it would be the word to describe it, with just a little bit more like Je vois le jus sans fait style, like boozy woodiness in the opening. So the opening feels a little bit more interesting, but that opening very quickly disappears, and it's just like Tonka tobacco, and then you're left with like, what I don't really like about it is the late dry down, where it's just that piercing molecule that sometimes shows up as ebony wood in fragrances, and that's all that's left on your skin. And it's just
generic.
It's just generic. It's not a bad fragrance. It's not like if it was like a designer price, you'd be like, this is fine, but it's not what you expect from Sheldrake and Serge Lutens.
Okay.
Coming back.
I mean, do you like? It's almost like they've done this interesting thing where like the opening notes are meant to grab the niche lover, not like the normal consumer. And if they can hook you in the store and you think you're buying like old school complex Serge Lutens, then you're in and you're stuck with that bottle. But if you like take your time with it, you're like, oh, it's actually not what I thought it would be.
I feel like it's like that a lot. Like if you were at a Serge Lutens boutique and you smelled the opening on a strip of paper that they were presenting to you, you'd probably be like, this is a lot more interesting than if you took it home and wore it for a good chunk of time. And that's disappointing, because I don't feel that Chergui is that way by any stretch of the imagination. That one kind of holds up and is continues to kind of fascinate me. I have a love-hate relationship with Chergui, but at least it's always an interesting fragrance. And Fumerie Turque, which is one of the samples I was going to talk about here, because that was one of the samples that came up. And I'd smelled it before, have now been spending more time with it. I know it's a favorite of Pep's and shows up frequently on his list. It's just such a more interesting take on it. Obviously, I don't think this is like a blockbuster seller for them. I think Chergui sells a lot better, but I don't know. It's disappointing because even if you take it out of the context of like tobacco, it's not like Sheldrake isn't capable of doing something interesting. Even only a few years ago, he produced one of my favorite fragrances, La Couche du Diable, which is a very interesting, labdanum heavy sort of like dark experience in the way. Oh, you got it?
I have a sample of it.
I love it. That to me is
right now.
That to me is like, sorry, I dropped this on the floor. Is like the it's like in my top 10 as far as like personal scents go. Like when I smelled that, I was like, oh, this is one of those things I've been looking for a long time and hadn't quite found. So I don't know. Serge Lutens has pulled out all of its U.S. distribution anyway, so it's getting increasingly hard to get. We're seeing that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's really difficult. I mean, we have distribution here, but it's really limited to their kind of main, rectangular bottle line and a couple of the Gratte-Ciel perfumes. But there's definitely nowhere I can get bell jars here. And then you go on their website and they won't ship to Australia either. So you have to know someone in Europe who's willing to risk shipping it to you.
That's a shame. I was able to order it directly from Serge Lutens itself, so they were shipping to the U.S. still from overseas. I had to wait quite a bit for it to get here, and it was a blind buy to get Écrit de Fumée, but I'm like, my brand is tobacco perfumes in some way, shape, or form. So I felt like I had to try it. And, at least I got the smaller bottle. I'll try it again in the fall, see how I do with it. But it's I don't know, safely right now, like kind of like a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
So what kind of bottle do you have for La Couche du Diable? What kind of bottle? Because they keep changing their packaging too, right? Like I just saw the list of what they're moving to bell jars next year.
I'm pretty sure it's still in the rectangular one like Ryan has.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, I got this for $30.
What?
I found this
where?
at TJ Maxx when they pulled out of U.S. distribution. It all got discounters. I was at TJ Maxx one day. They had this for $30. I bought it and I was overjoyed. I got this and La Fille de Berlin.
Nice.
Which was so lovely to get that one too. But this 100 ml of Serge Lutens for $30. I'm never gonna have
Totally worth it. Totally worth it.
Exactly. And I like La Couche du Diable as well. I remember smelling it actually as a blind sample before I knew what it was, and I really liked it as well. So it was a bonus that it was Serge.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for labdanum dominant fragrances. Like that's a note that really works for me. So in this case, I saw a review on Base Notes that described it as scorched labdanum, and I feel like that describes the fragrance very well, better than I could have ever done in words. But I really like it. Interesting that it was marketed as their oud fragrance, because I don't get oud from it at all.
No, I don't either.
It's pretty labdanum heavy, and even there's some sort of what comes off as a leather accord on my skin with that perfume as well. Speaking of tobacco, Ryan, I know, so one of the samples I got was Tabacco Toscano by Santa Maria Novella.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You've got that, haven't you? You've got that bottle.
So
not?
I did at one time have that bottle. My favorite my favorite of their tobacco fragrances, they have two, is Aqua di Cuba, which is
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, that one I really love. Tobacco Toscano is very nice. It reminds me of like a tobacco-y version of like the original Bulgari Black a little bit, but like with a little bit like suede leather in there. It's quite nice. It seems to sell very well for them because they have it in all different forms, like a shaving soap and a soap, and they kind of have built a whole line around Tobacco Toscano. But it's very nice. Have you worn it?
I haven't worn it yet. I'm just about to smell a little bit of it. And the other one I got is Andy Tower Sundowner, which I've heard is a tobacco scent as well. Well, at least it's one of the notes listed. But I've been curious to smell that one.
You'll like Sundowner. Sundowner. I don't own it, but it was one of those things where I smelled it and I was like, this is kind of impeccable. It's fully rounded and is one of Tower's best scents in a bit.
I totally get what you're saying about Bulgari Black with this Tobacco Toscano. I can smell it immediately. Wow, that's uncanny.
Yeah, because the tobacco is that sort of like rubbery type, so you almost get that sort of rubbery element in there a little bit.
Okay. I mean, it's nice, but the fact that it does smell a lot like black to me, because I used to love black, but I don't have a bottle of it anymore.
I don't either.
What are you sampling recently, Henna?
You know what? I sampled a few things. I don't know. I haven't tried anything that's like caught my attention that I keep going back to. So I've been getting rid of samples actually. I know. I'm right in your face. Like I'm in this like phase where I want to declutter and I want to get rid of things. So if it doesn't grab me, maybe this is bad. Like if it doesn't grab me immediately or if there's no reason for me to go back to it, kind of been like, okay, this is gonna go in like the discard pile, and I'm not gonna throw it in the garbage. Like I'll give it to someone that wants to smell it. But you know what? I really wanted to smell Green Spell by Eris Perfume. The only other ones I've smelled by them is MX and MXX. Three X's or two, I can't remember. I smelled both of those and I really liked them. So I'm gonna smell this one right now because Pep, I think you reviewed all of these, right? And you liked Mabet the best.
I like Mabet, yeah. And Mabet and then MXXX.
Yeah, and they said they posted their like bestsellers. I think Saint Cellier posted their bestsellers and Mabet is one of their bestsellers, which is interesting because I think it's like pretty challenging for you, right?
I don't know.
It is a little animalic, right? Isn't it? I don't know.
I think you could call it their most challenging one in the line. Yeah.
I've lost track of what is challenging and what isn't at this point. Like I'm kind of like I don't know anymore. I no longer have a reference point for like the person on the street smelling something in abstract. I don't know.
I guess I just mean like from their line, like from what they have. I think if that's the most animalic one, that's probably the most challenging, but probably also the most intriguing and maybe the one that people want then, right? Green Spell is nice, but it is kind of like a generic green scent. Not generic, but like I have so many green scents. I don't know if I would also go for this. Someone told me it reminded them of Sicily's Eau de Campagna, which is like gorgeous green scent, right? I don't know if you would need both.
I love Campagna. Eau de Campagna is one of those fragrances nobody like deserves like a resurgence of hype because that's like such a beautiful, beautiful scent. It's always like perpetually on my like wish list, but I don't pull the trigger on a bottle. I should really do that. I could wear
yeah.
Sicily seems to have a couple of really under talked about fragrances. I mean, I tried Eau de Soie because of
Hmm.
you, Henna, and I really love that one too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
catch my whiff. Thank you very much for that. No, I haven't tried 40 Rogue. Either of you tried 40 Rogue from Rogue, Ryan, Henna?
I've missed out on a number of the new Rogue fragrances. So I sampled the entire lineup a while back when they had their complete sample set and kind of went through everything they had. And then Manny kept producing new scents. And like, I haven't tried like Dervish 2, which was one of the ones that came out. So like, that was kind of my cutoff point, like pre Dervish 2. And then things have come out. And I'd be very interested to smell some of these because actually I think some of them sound interesting, and I would be curious to see what Manny's doing now because obviously there was a lot of interesting perspective there.
I don't know. I also unfortunately don't know 40 Love by Jean Desprez. So yeah, if I come across it, I'll try it. Thank you. Sorry, Hannah, did I cut you off? Were you about to start talking about another one?
No, no.
I was smelling. I've just been smelling Sundowner on this little piece of paper I have here, and it is it's really quite to me what I think about as tobacco. It's not sweet honey tobacco like a lot of fragrances are. It's actually really nice. It does remind me of a proper tobacco pouch as well.
Yeah, and what I find enjoyable about that fragrance in particular is that it strikes this wonderful balance between being very present for a very long period of time without being aggressively loud. So when I was wearing Sundowner, it always felt like I was taking it with me and it was like a nice companion for the day. I don't get compliments, but when I wore Sundowner, I was always getting compliments on how nice Sundowner smelled. So for those of you who want a tobacco fragrance that brings compliments, apparently Sundowner goes over very well. I got like a slight, it's not a sweet fragrance, it's not a gourmand fragrance by any stretch, but it has like a sort of like I get like a peach cobbler thing in it.
Okay.
It's nice.
Atman Zaman is one you've talked about a lot as well. I've yet to try that one too.
Pep and Henna, if you haven't tried it, I mean that fragrance is top tier stuff. Atman Zaman, I don't know that fragrance. I just got the EDP. I've had the EDT for a while. The EDT is almost as much of an Immortelle fragrance as the EDP is, but the EDP, which is just the same formula, just higher concentration, skews a lot more towards the tobacco. But it is really, really good. And I'm glad to see that people are starting to catch on with how good Villaraci is. I know a few of us have been like beating the Villaraci drum for quite a while, but like Atman Zaman and Ambra in particular is like for the gods. Those are.
And if any of you who are watching or on the stream ever get the chance to go to Florence, you have to do the Villaraci museum and store there. It's like it's amazing, as well as Santa Maria Novella.
Have you been to both of those, Pat?
Yeah. I spent one morning in Santa Maria Novella and another morning at Villaraci. So he's got this place like up on the hill looking down on the river, and it's a retail. He's got a retail space there, but it's kind of not like it doesn't look like a store. Like you have to look it up and see where you go, and then it's like really personalized service. And they let you smell everything, take your time. So it was a great experience.
And then did you book time to do that? Like, did you have to book in with them, or you just like walked in?
I think well, like admittedly, I didn't actually do a tour of
Okay.
the place. So maybe you do have to book now, because this was 4 years ago, and I don't know, and it was fairly new, I think. So maybe it's gotten more popular, but yeah, like it's definitely worth looking up. Um, so I wanted to ask you guys, and probably I know Henna, you mentioned that you starting to you were decluttering some of your samples, but when you like, we've obviously been in situations where we've had a ton of samples. Do you both have a process like for deciding what you're going to actively test? Because sometimes we get samples that, like through generosity of other people, obviously, and but a lot of stuff I kind of discovered by accident because I just happened to smell it and I thought, oh, this is good, and then I test it properly. But like, do you guys have like a system for getting through your samples?
Ooh. I mean, I like to smell things that people have sent me first. Like if sometimes people see something that I post on Instagram or something, and then they'll say, I'm going to send you this because I think you would like it. And, they're not going to just send me one thing. Like usually people send like two or three things or four things. So I'll go through those first and I'll usually keep everything because I feel like someone's like thought about me. It's like very sentimental. People like really like read into stuff. Someone's thought about me. Someone's put in the time to pick things that they thought I would like. So I usually hold on to it and I will revisit those samples. And even if I don't buy it right away, I will usually finish that sample. Like more often than not, I finished those samples. But like if it's like, I don't know, stuff that's like pre-packaged, then I'm not as sentimental about it. I'm like, hey, you were obviously decluttering also. So if it doesn't strike me right away, I'm just gonna, move it on. But like for example, like green spell, like yeah, it didn't wow me, but it's good. It's a good perfume. I'll
Yeah.
keep it. I'll wear it. I'll throw it in my gym bag. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like yeah, sometimes I get rid of stuff, but if it's from someone I know, I will keep it. I'll keep
What about you,
Yeah.
Ryan?
So uh, when I get a bunch of samples, at least from like a swap or a purchase with a direct like individual who has a fragrance collection of their own, and on that, if they include samples, I usually will go through once I've received the package and just quickly spray on paper and see what I think of the samples. Make a very gut level call whether this is going to be something I'm going to want to revisit and spend time with, or whether it's going instantly into like the giveaway pile. And then I have like my little pile of like things that were interesting enough to wear or revisit or pull out again at a later date. And that's the real sample pile. And that's like probably like 10% of the samples I receive. So a lot of the time I do that. If I receive samples from I rarely order fragrances directly from manufacturers that aren't artisanal perfumers or independent perfumers. But if I did, a lot of times I don't know, I don't go out of my way to do that. If it's from an artisanal perfumer, I almost always put those in my sample later pile and kind of work through those at a different point. Tend to give those the benefit of the doubt a little bit, and also because if I'm ordering from a bottle of something from an artisanal perfumer, I have familiarity with that house in some capacity. So
And if you like something you're sampling, this is for both of you. If you really like something you're sampling, are you? I tend now to actually make sure I finish the sample before I consider buying a bottle of something I really like, just in case it's not. I'm not infatuated with something for the first couple of wears, and then it I buy something, and then after a couple of wears of that bottle, I regret buying it. Like, do you guys just make sure? Do you give yourself time to make a decision like that?
Brian, look,
I mean,
this say right now.
I mean, I wish I said it. I wish I was that disciplined. I'm really not. It's a lot for me, it's a lot of like gut level calls. So sometimes I'll sample something, and will be immediately so euphoric that I'll just go ahead and like, okay, I'll buy the bottle. And that has had like a pretty good hit miss rate of like maybe 70% to 30%. But like, but sometimes I do actually like say like, okay, this smells really nice. I'm tempted to buy it. But this is something I want to spend a little bit more time with, especially if the retail price is intimidating. So retail price is a strong factor in how impulsive I will behave. Like for example, there is a house that like a pen manufacturer that has released some fragrances over the years called I don't know how you pronounce it exactly. I think it's Pineider.
Okay.
Yeah, and somebody gave me a sample of one of their fragrances that was their incense fragrance, and it's fantastic. It's phenomenal, but it's been discontinued for a while, and I'd have to spend like $300 to get a bottle. So I've been working through my sample very slowly, debating whether I would ever buy a bottle at $300, and so far I haven't. But that's one like I was a little bit more disciplined on.
Okay.
And Sundowner was one I was more disciplined on. I had like the smaller sample size and kind of worked through that and came to the place where I felt like I like personally I own a lot of tobacco fragrances. So tobacco fragrances, it's hard for me to fall in love with something like even if it's really great. And I think Sundowner is really great. I think like Chavoy's Le Jus Sauffé is really great, but I don't feel like I need to own either of those.
Yeah.
You know, things like that I tend to sample a lot more. How about you, Henna?
I feel like when I've waited, I like the decision I would have made would have been fine anyways, because it takes me so long to go through a sample. It's taking me sometimes like a year to finish a sample. And then a year later, like if it's for something like Chanel, like a year later, the price is so much more, right? Because they raise their prices every year. So like, for example, like Coromandel, like I loved it when I smelled it. I was like, this is it. Favorite perfume ever. I still took my time and I finished my sample. Then I bought a bottle, but I could have just bought it and it would have been fine. So I don't do that as much anymore. There are some brands that I trust more than others where I know that what I'm going to get is going to be quality. Santa Maria Novella, for example, same thing, right? Like I had a little sample of Melograno. It's not quite finished yet, but then like someone was willing to bring back a bottle for me. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to jump on that. I know it's going to be good. So yeah, I think some brands I feel like they need more time to really reveal their qualities, but other ones I just know. So.
That's a good point about Chanel. I regret not buying certain Chanels when they were a little bit cheaper than they are now.
Like for some brands, it's like $50. That's a significant amount of money, right?
It is, and it's funny. Like it's funny that the market is what it is. Like most Santa Maria Novella fragrances are, at least in U.S. prices, like $150, which now feels like a lower end of the like higher end market, right? So, but like Chanel prices are insane. So I really want and have wanted for a long time a bottle of Sycamore, and I kind of have like stalled on it, and now it's so expensive that I'm always hemming and hawing about getting it, and it's only to get more expensive. So I think I'm never going to have that bottle of Sycamore that I really want.
And did you originally try the EDT Sycamore, Ryan? So that's gone as well.
And that's practically unobtainium unless I'm like willing to fork over $600, $700 at this point. But the EDT was gorgeous. The EDP is still beautiful. It's just a different scent profile. I don't know, Chanel, you know, it's one of those houses that's so difficult because like the quality is always there. Like I don't feel the quality is always there with the Dior exclusives and all these other houses, but Chanel has been pretty reliable that what they're going to come out with is you can at least say it's not going to be bad, and it's often very, very good. But those prices, man, ouch.
Yeah,
Ouch.
I agree. And I'm kind of in that same sort of situation with Le Lion, Ryan, because I know Cherie sent me a 10 mil decant, and then when I was in Milan, someone I know from Instagram gave me another, like probably 15-20 mil of it. So I've got plenty of it, but by the time I get around to getting a bottle, it's going to be like so expensive.
It's brutal. And so last year I was in, there aren't a lot of Guerlain boutiques in America anyway. So I was in Vegas, and I was able to visit the small Guerlain boutique they have there. It's not like a big boutique, but I finally just said, hell with it. I'm going to get Bois d'Harmonie, which I had always wanted for a long time. But like the retail price on that, I can't justify that. I'm speaking on the stream. I can't justify what I spent on that bottle.
That Guerlain line is like, there's a lot of beautiful ones there, but they've just kind of they've priced themselves out of my market.
It's hard. And it's a shame, because I really did that. I would love a bottle of Le Lion too. I mean, that's the thing. By the time I'm ready to buy it, what is it going to be? $500 a bottle at that point? I don't know. What is the retail? 400 something at this point in time?
I don't know what it is in US dollars. I mean,
Ryan, you're clearly going to get the 200 ml, right? Like, the 100 isn't that much, because I think it's like $275 or something in Canada. So, could get the smaller bottle, right?
I think I can get it in. There's like retails here for $335 Australian, but I need to see if that is
for the smaller
bottle.
Size. Okay.
Well, no, this place looks like it's advertising the 200 ml bottle, so that seems. Oh no, sorry, that is no, it's 75 ml. So that's
375, not even 100.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Australian. 335 Australian for 75 ml.
Yeah, so if I got the 75 mil, I'm looking at prices right now. It's $275. I mean, I guess that's, in the scheme of things, not terrible. When you do the like, I mean, it's bad, but it's not like, I've seen worse.
If you sell your bottle of Écrin de Fumée and maybe some other things.
You have a good point. I can make this work. But
I believe in you.
Sycamore will be mine. But I'm seeing this debate going over Le Lion in the.
Rich is unimpressed by Le Lion.
I feel like it's Coromandel for
what?
Take on it. Coromandel for men, like Coromandel for Like, we'll make it leathery, smoky, intense, and we'll call it Le Lion.
I'm not a big like Chanel fanboy or get into their history and all of that, but to me, when I first smelled Le Lion, it just seemed so like such an un-Chanel kind of perfume to me compared to everything else that I'd smelled. That's what I mean. I guess that's a good thing, but I still love it.
I think it's very nice, but I also love Coromandel. So I don't know if I were really to choose a bottle between the two, I don't know whether I would go for Coromandel or Le Lion. Coromandel, I have a pretty sizable decant of though. So Coromandel, my decant is going to last me a long time. I wear Coromandel in the fall a good amount. That's a beautiful fragrance. And I don't think if Le Lion really is Coromandel for men, I don't think Coromandel needed a masculine flanker. I think it was perfectly wearable as it was. But
obviously, it's not really that. It's just, in my opinion, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I get what you mean. I get what you mean, Hannah. I mean, I like Coromandel as well. It's only because I like other patchouli fragrances that it's not on my radar in terms of a bottle. But the reason Le Lion is because there aren't that many. I mean, speaking of Le Couche du Diable and like, there aren't that many labdanum heavy fragrances like that I really like. Let's just check. So I'll just briefly mention how I kind of work with my samples. It's a bit, it's a little bit sort of not a system so much in that, like, I might occasionally just sniff stuff like I did today with the ones I've got, and usually if I don't like it off a blotter or a piece of paper, I'm less likely to test it on skin. So if I like what I smell, then I'll put it on skin and see if I still like it. And I also, when I decide, like, I have currently about 65 bottles of perfume, but I know, because I'm a real nerd and I track my perfume wearing, I know that, like, half of what I wear, or nearly half of what I wear, are samples or decants, as well as my bottle. So I have constant, like, samples in my rotation. But I guess that comes with, like, and you guys would know this, if you're going to try and talk about perfumes on YouTube, you can't always talk about the ones that you own bottles of, otherwise people would get really bored. But so that's kind of what I do. And usually I will persist. Like, I'd wear a sample at least 3 or 4 times, more if I like it. But like, and I usually finish samples. The one sample I couldn't finish was Red Tobacco by Mansera. I just had enough. I had just had enough of wearing that one.
Did you hear that they're coming out with an extrait of
Red
Tobacco?
But you know what, Ryan? I'm a bit cynical about this, because I remember people talking about Red Tobacco being like a very strong perfume, and then I started seeing posts on Base Notes and other forums saying that people thought it had been reformulated and it seemed weaker. And I bet that this new one is just the old formula of Red Tobacco.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. I had the same exact thought, because everybody was complaining that the color had changed and now it was a weaker fragrance, and now they're coming out with an extrait. But either way, kill it with fire. It's a horrible fragrance. Don't wear
it. I was just like, this one caught my attention. I don't know if, I know Christopher Sheldrake is doing some work with, he's got some kind of position with Osmotec in Paris, and
I don't know if he's officially employed. I think he just collaborated.
He still does stuff with Serge, as far as I know. But Rich mentioned Borneo 1834. That's the patchouli perfume that I would buy before Coromandel, if I could get it. But that's another one I can't find here, Ryan.
Yeah. So I do know that Sheldrake had a relationship with Chanel. He was reporting to Jacques Polge for a while as their director of research and development for a while. So even if he wasn't credited as perfumer on that, a lot of times he was probably a major contributor or shadow perfumer on stuff while he was in that role. So, and I know he, what was the one we were particularly talking about? He collaborated on Coromandel in the 2007 release for sure. Yeah. I'm not sure which other ones, but yeah. So that DNA is definitely there. So I guess the relationship between Borneo is very, very clear there.
Catch my whiff. I do use an Excel spreadsheet, like I know some people do. I'm a nerd, but I also track my scent of the day religiously on Base Notes, because it's just a habit I've gotten into now, and that's how I know what my most worn perfumes are. Like, it's not a guess. I actually know how many times I've worn particular perfumes, all because of base notes. If you're interested in that kind of thing, I highly recommend it. I know Ryan's on base notes, Henna's on base notes. Sometimes I see their scent of the day listing, so it's always fun to see what people are wearing. Okay, just watched the Sebastian video on Red Tobacco the other day and mentioning how good it was. Well, I mean, I can't comment on whether it's good or not because I haven't smelled it. And I please don't want this to be taken as me throwing any kind of shade at all, but I'm not surprised that Sebastian liked it if he's putting it on his channel.
So, Pep, what do you do with samples that you don't like? Do you pass them on to people? Like, do you keep them for reference? Like,
I know this is bad, but usually I don't leave enough of the sample to give to anyone. Like, I'd feel bad giving them a drop of
like
something.
a tiny drop, yeah.
And if I
so
think
you
it's
do wear enough of it to know.
if I think it's really, really bad, I'll bin it, and I don't want to expose anybody else to it.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean,
But that
sometimes I find
that doesn't happen very often, though, Henna.
yeah. I find sometimes I need to I like to overspray it a little bit to see what it really is. You know what I mean? Like 1 or 2 sprays is not enough. Sometimes I like a lot just to see.
I definitely have, and even in the closet right now, I moved relatively recently, so I just have a big set of like big plastic bags in the closet of like tons of samples. And I usually, whenever I'm swapping a fragrance or I've sold a fragrance, I just like reach in, grab like a grab bag of samples and just throw it in, and just like whoever gets it can enjoy them or not. And that's how I do it. I rarely throw something out unless it's truly heinous. Sometimes if it's really bad, I'll just get rid of it. Red Tobacco, I don't think I pass.
What I've done in the past as well is whenever I've sold bottles, like whenever I've actually sold bottles, which I normally do through local Facebook groups, if someone buys one of my bottles, I'll just put in a few samples that I know I'm not using with the bottle. So that's one way that I kind of reduce them as well.
Yeah,
I have samples that I've kept for reference. So, like Iris Silverman, I have a little sample of that. I didn't feel like I wanted it, but I have a sample for reference.
Yeah.
I do that with certain houses and certain fragrances that I know I'm not going to wear a bit, but like I do want to smell every once in a while to remind myself of what it is. But I also find myself, I'm very fickle that way, because sometimes I'll just go through like a spring cleaning mode, and it's like I will go through, and it's like if I'm going through the drawer, and it's like if it's not like a love, it gets cut from the squad very quickly. I'm not very good at keeping like a roster of reference stuff around, like even stuff that's why I tend to sometimes rebuy perfumes that I've gotten rid of, because I'll go through a month where I'm feeling like very aggressive about cutting things, and then I'll be like, oh, I kind of wish I had that around to smell it. Like I bought different concentrations of Shalimar a few times because I've gotten rid of the bottle and then I pull that back in, or things like that. Did a lot of her a few times, yeah.
Now that you brought it up though, Ryan, like have either of you, because I haven't actually done this yet, repurchased something that I sold. So far so good. Like I haven't really had any regrets about anything I've sold. Oh, I've lost Henna. Can you still hear us, Henna?
She might have just stepped away for a second.
Okay. But you just mentioned you have done that. So like what are some examples of ones that you've repurchased?
Okay, hold on. Let me open my perfume here and like look at some of the ones I have repurchased. So I have definitely repurchased. So one fragrance I swapped out. I have my collection right now, like organized alphabetically by house. So it'll just go. Aramis Tobacco Reserve. I got rid of, and I ended up rebuying that. Let's see what we have over here. Yeah, none of those. I rebought just very recently. This is Dolce & Gabbana Velvet Incenso, which I really liked as an incense fragrance. I swapped it out and then I repurchased it. Gianfranco Ferre for Man, the original vintage. I rebought that.
Was that an early Greek influencer purchase? Or did you have it before he talked about it?
I had it before he talked about it.
Okay.
And then we've talked about a few Guerlains that I've sold and repurchased. Jean-Paul Gaultier Cocorico, which that one have required. I'm trying to think if there's any others here that I am seeing that I swapped and got rid of and then pull back in. I think that's it from the roundup. But a few things. I don't know. I can be fickle that way. A lot of the ones I end up rebuying are just things like I kind of just like to smell on occasion.
Yeah.
Like I don't think any of those are ones that I wear a ton, but it's just kind of things that I don't know. The advantage to having a big collection is like things that you would only wear occasionally do kind of pop up in your rotation a little bit.
It's interesting. The only one I've sometimes kind of thought about maybe I should get a bottle of, because I used to have an older bottle of Kouros. So this is only like it wasn't like vintage 1980s Kouros, but it was like probably early 2000s, and it was different to what you can buy today. And I didn't mind it, but I didn't love it enough to keep it. But every now and then, I will actually smell the current version of Kouros, which a lot of people say is nowhere near as skanky, or it's probably a bit more floral, a bit cleaner. And I actually really don't mind the way it smells at the moment, but not enough to actually repurchase. But it's one that I do occasionally think about buying.
But when you sell things, like you're selling them, are you usually selling them at a loss, or are you able to sell them at what you've paid for them? Because Ryan, I'm thinking about you, like you sell things and you rebuy them.
No, I'm always selling at a loss, because
that's what I find.
I'm not buying any vintages that tend to hold their value a little bit more. And so, I just accept if I'm going to sell it, I'm not getting my money back. It's just all it's doing is going to partly refinance a new purchase.
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
So what I do is I usually I don't sell as much as I swap. So I swap fragrances aggressively. And in that way, I've actually found it kind of evens out, because a lot of people are willing to take fragrances that they're kind of curious about and take a loss on something they might have. And I've done the same, right? Like if I have a fragrance that's just collecting dust that was pricey, but I'm not wearing it, and somebody comes to me with something very interesting, I'm very happy to come to some sort of arrangement. And I've usually found in that space, especially with the people who I've swapped with, and at this point I tend to swap with like the same like 5 or 6 people over and over again. So it's kind of like a loop of sorts. Like we tend to be very generous with one another. So it's kind of like I swap at a loss here and you swap very generously to me later on, not consciously doing it, but it just seems to work out that way.
Well,
And
and at the end of the day, what it costs you is just the shipping, right?
right, right.
So,
And what's fun about swapping, and the reason I recommend it to anybody is if you just put out a bunch of stuff that you have that you're just kind of willing to get rid of, the offers you get will also often bring things to your door that you would never have ordinarily thought about
Yeah.
trying for yourself. And when you have a bottle of something, now Pep is a very good sampler. He's already doing a very diligent like sample journey, but I find that I tend to give things that I have a bottle of a more solid chance to win me over. And sometimes I've really come to know things a little bit that I otherwise wouldn't have thought were for me. And I've appreciated that. Even if the stuff has only lived in my collection for 6 months or so, I've really enjoyed the 6 months I spent with that particular fragrance. And having it there and having the experience of ownership with it. And I like swapping a lot.
yeah. I mean,
mean,
I
you go,
got
you go.
L'Heure Bleu. I got L'Heure Bleu in a swap, and I traded Light Blue for it. So that worked out in my favor, and that was it, right? And I wasn't looking for L'Heure Bleu, but I knew I did not want Light Blue anymore in my collection. So yeah.
I
Yeah. Sorry, you go, Ryan.
No, I was going to say I get that wholeheartedly, and I find that people who are swapping rather than like buying or selling are generally like, I don't know. One of the reasons I've loved being on Base Notes, and it's been an interesting community over the years, is just a lot of people have been like proactively willing to share stuff just for the joy of sharing it. And you don't always see that in certain corners of the community, but sometimes you do. And I really appreciated, like, even without swapping, and that particular community is the community I tend to swap with, is like, if there's just a lot of like, oh, you haven't smelled this? Oh, okay, let me like message you and send you a sample of this because I think this is a really nice perfume that
I
you
was
might.
going to say the other thing about swapping with regular sort of group of people as well is that they eventually get to know what your taste is like, and they can actually recommend that you try some stuff that you might not have tried. I agree with this comment. Catch my whiff. That is one of the kind of criteria that I use when I choose what to sell. If I, because I do tend to rotate through my bottles, but if I get around to a bottle I haven't worn for a while and it stops getting me excited about wearing it, that's kind of one of the first signs I look for when I think, oh, maybe I don't need this bottle in my regular rotation anymore.
Yeah, so V was talking about selling Timbuktu and then rebuying Timbuktu,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's hard to find a bottle of Timbuktu. That's, I mean, at least the old bottles too, right? Like, I don't know.
I have an old bottle of 50 ml, which is kind of only got like probably 20 ml left. I'm going to finish it, but I'm probably not going to replace it when it's done. Or I'm definitely not going to try and look for an old bottle. Put it that way.
Will you save your empty bottle or will you throw it out?
Well, I don't know because I haven't actually emptied many
Never
bottles. In
happened
fact,
before. Yeah.
yeah, like or it might have been a really cheap perfume. But I don't know. Like, I know the practical thing is, well, what am I going to do with it? I'll just throw it away. But like,
Don't.
yeah, no, I get how you could be like sentimentally attached to a particular bottle, especially once it's empty, and especially once you can't replace that bottle anymore. Like, I know my bottle of MFK Absolute Pour le Soir was a gift. Like, was a gift to me. Like, it was a partial bottle. I'm getting to the end of it, and I probably will hold on to that bottle when it's empty because it's not in production anymore. It was a gift as well, and so like my bottle of Derby by Guerlain as a gift from someone, and I'll hold on to that. So yeah, like there are bottles I probably will hold on to when they're empty, just for sentimental value.
I'm trying to think of what I've emptied. I have definitely thrown out my bottles before, but in some cases that was because I rebought them, and there wasn't like a point of like having an empty version of the same bottle that I now still had on my shelf, unless the bottle had changed. So, like Hermes Eau de Merveille, I went through a bottle of, and now I'm on my second bottle of that.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
you what? Yeah, that's surprising. I mean, I don't know why. It's like, was it like a whole bottle? Was it a 50 ml and then you bought the 100, or?
Yeah, it was a 50, and then I bought the whole 100.
Because those come in like little minis now, and they have 30 also, I think.
Yeah.
Would you have any idea how long it took you to empty that bottle, Ryan? Like we're talking. I'm assuming we're talking at least a couple of years.
It was a couple of years. It was more than a couple of years. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking it was probably 4 years before I emptied that bottle. And now I'm going through the 100 ml at a very slow rate, so that will last me probably a decade plus. But I do really love that fragrance. I have a lot of sentimental attachment to that fragrance, and that was a fragrance that I wore for the first time when I was abroad. I was on a trip where I was in Lisbon and Seville in Spain, and I have just a lot of fondness of wearing that fragrance during that time, and it's become one of my favorite warm weather fragrances to wear. So I
totally understand that. Yeah,
it's very precious to me, and I still think it's a very lovely fragrance. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would potentially keep a bottle if it was something like Guerlain Derby or something like that, where it was like a very beautiful bottle. If it was a kind of ugly bottle, I'm sorry, it's probably getting binged pretty quickly.
What's an ugly bottle though?
Samba Skin Man. Google it.
No, you're not Googling it.
I mean, bottles like Rochas Man could come in handy for things, but that's another topic. This comment by the Scent one is good. I like the idea of a shrine of empty bottles. Like with a couple of diptyque candles lit there, and worshipping at the altar of perfume memories.
Some bottles are meant to be displayed too, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that they're just like useless once they're empty. I have a few empty bottles.
So what are your empty bottles that you display?
I don't have them displayed right now, but I have a bottle of Philosopos that I kept, and I will replace that one. I'll probably get EDP, I think. I finished in EDP, so I like it. Easy reach for me. I have a bottle of Glossier U, which is a very popular scent here. I don't even think it's available in Australia yet, and it's not available in Europe at all. But I have an empty bottle of it. It's cute. I don't know. I just keep it. I don't know. It represents like a moment in time, So that one especially, it's like a very, like for the masses, like for teenagers. I don't know. I just kept the empty bottle.
I understand that, and you don't have to write off Philosopos as an easy reach. I think that's a gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, it is.
Did you say you were going to replace it with? You had the EDP and you're going to replace it with the EDT?
Yeah.
Is that because you prefer the EDT, or you just want to try the different version?
I'll just try a different version of it. I'll just own a different version of it. I think they're both good. When I was going to buy something, I was like, I really like the EDP better, but since I've already finished a bottle of it, now I'll get.
I'm catching my whiff. I'm not sure that I can totally agree with this comment, given some of the newer Zaharoff bottles I've seen on on the internet, but maybe some of the early ones were. I think I'm just more referring to some of the recent labels I've seen, but that's just my taste. I'm not, I don't want to start any wars with Zaharoff ambassadors or anything like that. Gail.
Yeah. Yeah, they really do. They do
Oh yeah,
retain their scent. Yeah.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I had somebody send me that I was very happy with, and this is true. So I was very happy that they did. I had never gotten a chance to smell it, and I had wanted to smell it for a while, which was Basala by Shiseido. They sent me an empty bottle of it, but it still had the scent of Basala in it, and it was a gorgeous fragrance. So I was lovely that I was able to just like smell the bottle.
Yeah.
When I wanted to, and it was a nice way of smelling a fragrance that is, I mean, niche prices at this point, like probably $250 a bottle. So it was like nice to have that experience without, and I think that might be thoughtful too, is holding on. If like you had a particularly rare vintage fragrance that you could finish the bottle of, holding on to it to retain that scent as a reference makes a lot of sense to me. As why you would keep that around. So
yeah, like a few years ago, I bought little Arpege Extrait bottles, Lanvin Arpege, and I bought my Sin the Extrait also. And because they're dabber bottles and you have to like screw on the top, I ended up decanting them for myself, and I still have the empty bottles. Like I'll keep those. Those are, I think, really beautiful and unusual, right? So,
sure.
yeah. True about vintage for sure.
I'm just wondering, because we've had a pretty good conversation about samples, and it's been going along very nicely and organically, and we're getting good comments. But should we try and talk about something a little bit more controversial now?
Yeah, we're at that point. We're at that point
Well,
enough coffee.
hopefully this doesn't cause too much drama or stress, but we did kind of probably mention something that we might talk about is, and some people, I know you guys know Sam from My World of Fragrance. She's got a YouTube channel, and we probably all follow her on Instagram. Some time ago, she made a video about perfume brands that she doesn't purchase or review on her channel.
I think she said like she's no longer going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys have certain brands? And look, you don't even have to name them, but I'd be interested to hear about like the reason why you wouldn't purchase a particular brand or talk about them, for instance.
I feel like even when I think I don't like a brand, I'm sometimes really surprised by what I do like. So, like the first time I smelled Diaghilev, I was shocked at like how good it was, and that wasn't what I was expecting. I just wasn't, I don't know, I guess I didn't just know enough, right? So because of that, like I am open to smelling everything. Like I just want to smell things, and then I'll decide if I like it or not. So.
On that very topic though, Henna, I've smelled maybe off the top of my head at least 10 different Roger perfumes, right?
Huh.
And I've liked most of them. Probably, like I can't actually think of one I didn't like. But then what it is for me is that, well, like, yeah, I like them. Some of them did remind me of other things, like, whether it's better quality or not, I don't know, but like there is nothing wrong with what I smelled. But when you get to deciding whether, is this something I want, and then you consider price, and all of a sudden it just goes, well, it's not that. I don't need it that much, and so, like that that's not a brand that I would never speak about. Like I've done a couple of reviews for Roger Dove, but there's clearly a marketing list that goes out, and he gets the exposure that he wants. People buy bottles, people talk about them. I guess where I'm coming from is that like you definitely will not be missing me reviewing them or talking about them or owning them for that matter.
Certainly not. I mean, if any of us don't buy a bottle of Roja, he's not going to cry about it. But Roja is one of those houses that I don't tend to seek out. Let's put it that way. So
Yeah.
so it's. I agree with you, and actually, I have defended Roja to a point in a kind of like backhanded compliment way that I think what I like about Roja, and I'll just is that even though he's pursuing a kind of customer price point that is not my price bracket, he is keeping a very classical style of perfume alive for the most part. Sure, there's things like Elysium in the lineup and things like that, but it's very clear to see that the kind of passion for perfume that motivates that entire lineup is an older tradition of perfumery. And sure, if you want to jazz that up in glitzy bottles and sell that as the hit new perfume of the year, more power to you. I'm excited about you doing that, to be honest, because if you're going to keep like a reworked Mitsuko alive as a luxury product that people are really excited about, that's great, because otherwise that perfume style is just going to die. So I have a lot of, if not respect, then like kind of like admiration for the fact that it's keeping those styles alive, that it's actually making those styles desirable, whether through luxury good marketing or whatever Roja is doing. That's cool. But it is also the case that consistently with Roja, as nice as some of the things are, it feels like I don't need to go to Roja to get what I want. Like I can find... There hasn't been a Roja perfume that I loved so much that was so distinct to me that I felt like that was the perfume I couldn't live without. And maybe that will one day change. Roja's still releasing perfumes. I may one day yet stumble upon something. But that is a house that I haven't sought out because it feels like it's occupying a space of things that I like, but I've generally liked the things it's kind of like adjacent to a little bit more. So
yeah.
But Ryan, is there a brand that you won't try or you won't talk about that you're just like,
I would be very embarrassed if ever I bought a bottle of Parfume de Marly and talked about Parfume de Marly.
So even if you go into Nordstrom, like you don't just like pick up the bottle and like, what is all the fuss about? Like you don't even like do that? Like
I don't. I really don't with Parfume de Marly, and that's not to say I haven't sampled some Parfume de Marly. Like I have tried a number of like the Parfume de Marly stuff, but at this point, and I'm just going to be honest, it's what has really turned off the brand for me is like their influencer tactics and the way they kind of like. I hate to say that the influencer tactics impact the perfume because the juice is supposed to be what matters, and I generally hold myself to that standard in some ways. Like if it smells good, it's good, but it's like there's just something about it that feels like it's kind of like, I don't know, I just very gauche. I don't know how else to say it. Like I can't bring myself to gravitate towards that. I'm trying to think if there are other brands that incite like a similar response to me. I mean, some of these what's the I don't want to hold on, let me look up this brand because I'm just gonna forget which brand it is. But what is that one house that keeps working with like YouTube influencers to create like lines of like fragrance lines and like sites like Bertrand Duchefort and things like that? Hold on.
It's not Zaharoff.
No, it's not Zaharoff. It's It's the same one. Hold on, I've got Duchefort's thing pulled up.
Oh, it's not. Are you thinking of Dossier, Ryan?
No, Navitus Parfums.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would never, I would not,
oh, there we go.
not touch Navitus. And again, you can just watch you can watch all the YouTube exposés about that. I don't really respect what the brand is doing. It's I'm kind of curious about it because it seems like what they're really picking up is a lot of like off-the-shelf formulas that Duchefort and others just kind of like used over the years, and then like reissuing them. So like things that Duchefort did for like a job here and there that didn't get picked up. That's kind of interesting to me because, like, I mean, Mall is doing the high end of that. Like we talk about Musc Ravageur, that was just something that was lying in a drawer until Mall decided to like tweak it slightly and release it. But I don't know, the whole thing around that brand and its tactics is pretty icky to me. So I wouldn't go for Navitus. Yeah.
What about you, Henna?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't really come across the opportunity to smell Navitus, but I mean, even with Parfum de Marly, you know, I kind of didn't get what the hype is because we only have like one place that sells them. That is Nordstrom's. And I don't know if you guys heard, Nordstrom's pulled out of Canada. So now you can't get them anywhere anymore. But when I went to Orlando, I saw them at the airport at duty free. And then I was like, oh, like this is where everybody's getting them because I guess they have them at all the airports in the States and you can get them cheaply and very easily. And maybe that's why they seem so common, right? But I feel like Delina, like with the Lychee Rose and Delina, like there are some higher end brands that rip that off and are doing their own Lychee Rose, and they're so similar. I don't know. I guess that's why I want to smell everything because you don't know what's really being referenced until you smell the high and the low, right? And I don't know.
I mean, I think that's very important, right? Like, so you, especially if you're tracing like pop, more like not niche, like weird niche, but like mastiche styles and what's trending in that, it is helpful to smell things like Parfum de Marly. Like Carlisle has been reproduced like 90,000 times in slightly tweaked variations across all of these houses, and it's kind of like helpful to have that as like a reference point. I completely understand. Yeah.
But it's common in the States, but in Canada, it's niche because we can't get it here.
That's
right.
I mean, it's not that common in the States. I want to say like if you live in a wealthy area with like a good Nordstrom or a Saks or something like that, be able to get it. But like if you're in a conventional like area, like you're not going to find.
Like if you're in a small town, you can't find it. No. But if you're in a big city, you can find it.
In a big city, you can find it pretty easily.
Yeah, and here in a big city, you can't find it at all, right? You can't get it in Toronto. So, I don't know.
Geographic niche. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly, right?
I mean that's kind of that's interesting.
Something to think about.
I would have thought they would have been everywhere, given how freely they give away their bottles to influencers. So I don't know.
I have not heard of Bob's comment. I haven't heard of Etiquette. Do you guys know about Etiquette?
Mm-hmm. Etiquette's a small, not small. It's like a niche store in Canada. It's in Montreal. Yeah. So they carry lots of these niche brands. But that's what I mean. Like you'd have to go to Etiquette. You wouldn't be able to go to like a department store.
I tend to avoid brands and there's been a few of them, and maybe being on Instagram you're kind of exposed to them a little bit more, but there are brands that pop up and those brands that kind of use this sort of remote address in Paris, and they're not actually physically based there, so they could be being manufactured anywhere, but they market it as a Paris-based brand. Like usually that's a red flag for me as well, as sort of a type of perfume that is being produced very cheaply, pre-made oils mixed with alcohol and packaged up to look more expensive or more better quality than they actually are.
Yep. I don't know. Instagram houses, like the Instagram, almost like houses that pop in and out, are things like I try to avoid wholeheartedly, because it just feels like there's just so many flash in the pan, like brief bursts of houses that obviously get like a little bit of like promotional burst and then you never hear from again. And there's the ones like you said that are just like the fake address, and then there's the other ones that seem to like show up in certain places but like are also just kind of like just feel very also ran to me, like I don't know, like I don't know, since we're just naming houses, like Matiere Premiere
Oh yeah.
like been like I was swapped out a bottle, and I got a bottle of Falcon Leather to swap, and I thought it was fine, but it's like I think I even talked about it in a few streams at different points, saying that I was kind of enjoying it, but like it's just like not a house that's worth somebody's time in the scheme of like a world in which we live, which is just like too much perfume everywhere all at once. Like we're just inundated with perfume options at any given time, and it's like sometimes this goes back to not just like which houses we'd avoid, but the sampling conversation. It's just like you have to make a choice at some point about like what is going to be what I spend my time on. And there's just a lot of houses that are just kind of like probably okay, but like, do you want to spend your time with a house that's just gonna be okay when there's tons of stuff you haven't smelled yet in the world? I don't know.
Yeah. I just
Oh my
want
God.
to catch my whiff. I've only tried one or two from Rainier, like Kisses. I think it was Kisses Rain and Black Rain from years ago, but I don't really remember. I didn't dislike them from memory, but I haven't had much experience with them. Have you guys tried Rainier, Ryan, Henna?
I think I have no.
I'm googling them in the background, but yeah, I don't think so. Oh, I've seen models. Okay.
I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to name the brand because I actually worry if I do name this brand that they will really try and sort of censor me in some kind of way, because there's an Australian brand that is loved by quite a few people from what I see on social media. Natural Perfumery, and probably you can narrow it down from there. But I'm not sure what I did, but I think my only crime was that I tried some samples and didn't love them, but I didn't hate them, and I didn't write anything negative about them. But but basically they blocked me on on Instagram, and I only found out by accident that they blocked me. But they also have a reputation for downvoting negative reviews on Fragrantica and getting people to do that. So, a perfume can be great, but if I find out that the people behind it are kind of not great, that puts me off wanting to buy a perfume as well.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. There are fragrance houses that I have come to mind that are particularly litigious in their defense of themselves and their reputation, which I also find to be a bad look. Going around trying to beat negative discourse with lawyers is a bad look.
Yeah.
And it's just insecurity about your own your product's ability to kind of like rise above it. That's the piece of it that I don't quite understand. Like, good perfume.
Like, if you think you made something that great, why not just let it speak for itself? Right?
Exactly. But that's going back to something that was commented on earlier. Like there are some YouTubers who, because of that, will only ever post positive, talk about perfumes they like. Not saying that they only do that. They'll only talk about it because in a positive manner. They basically, if they don't like something, they won't put it up on the channel, because a couple of them have had like people try to take them down or worse, and it's just like, you're gonna put a product out there, you got to be able to take the good with the bad. I mean, that's what I think anyway.
I mean, to everybody's defense, there's lots of good stuff out there too, right? That you'll never get tired of talking about the things that you really like, or even just like, right? So I don't know. And perfume, it's hard to wear a perfume that you just don't like. Like, to put it on your skin all day and then go and review it, like, that's hard to do also. So I mean, I kind of like when people say, yeah, this wasn't for me, here's why, and I'm done with it. Like, that's it. I don't know.
I agree, and I think that's true. I find it very hard to talk at length about perfume I don't like. It's kind of it's a very visceral negative reaction, and then there's kind of like, because you're putting distance between yourself and whatever it is because you don't like it, it's very hard to dig into it and find enough interesting things to say about it to even talk about it at length beyond I don't like it. It's something I have to really viscerally dislike something to be willing to like continually like beat the drum about how much I hate it.
And then it's almost going to come across like you're biased, right?
And
like you have an axe to grind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But as much as I might beat the drum against red tobacco, I've had plenty of like Montal and Mancera things that didn't set me off that way. So it's not like I'm biased against the house in general. I just think red tobacco in particular is, in its original form, just like a nuclear apocalypse of a fragrance. So
I find the hardest things to reviews are the ones that are just boring. Like
oh, sure.
Like I don't like them, but I don't necessarily hate them or think they're a bad perfume. But if it's something that like it just smells like other stuff that's been out before, like that's the hardest review for me, because like, what am I going to say? Like, you say, maybe they should only be like 2-minute videos, but or save them for shorts on YouTube. So
yeah, I feel that too, and it's like yeah, I don't know. It's that's the hardest thing, and I feel like that can come from fragrances that are very nice. Like, for example, I think Amouage on the whole is a very nice house that has a lot of high quality fragrances, but there is this like mid range of stuff in the Amouage lineup that I just kind of like don't connect with and have nothing to say about beyond that. Yeah, it's relatively nicely made with good materials, and it does absolutely nothing to excite me. And I can't really say much more about those fragrances than that. And that's fine, and I don't talk about it. It's really hard to articulate anything about that worth hearing.
And that's okay. I think, for every Amouage that doesn't move you, there's going to be someone that really loves it and is talking about it, right?
Right. So, like, for example, some of those are ones that people really like. It seems to be like Dia Man is one that people really like, and it's like it's a big shrug for me, but it's not bad. I would much rather people wear Diaman than other things if I'm in the room. It's a perfectly
Red
pleasant
tobacco.
experience.
I think this is a good point by Catchmo with like I agree. I think it just takes time to get to know reviewers, because there are people like most of the reviewers I watch don't actually do many. I mean, I haven't seen you guys do many negative reviews. You might have talked about some skincare, makeup stuff, Hannah, that you probably didn't love. But like in terms of perfume, like I,
I
I
think
think
I've done some first impressions where
yeah,
I didn't love everything that I
yeah.
tried.
But
Yeah.
I think first impressions is a good platform
Yeah.
for if you don't like something, that's kind of the most genuine reaction you're going to get. Like if you don't like something in the first impressions, then that's usually a good indication. And then if you end up testing it and loving it, you can come back and say, "Oh, well, it grew on me," or whatever, it changed on my skin. And I think really it just comes down to understanding who you're watching, and if you like, if they're talking about, if you get an understanding that they're not just talking about products that they regularly get, and they're obliged to make a video about it, because unfortunately a lot of people don't disclose that either, so it's hard to tell. But if you disclose it, and that's all good. But yeah, but I don't really watch. Well, I mean, there's not that many, but a lot of the people I watch and enjoy watching and I trust don't do that many negative reviews at all, because you end up talking about stuff you're wearing and that you're enjoying, and that sort of comes across to me. Like at least if I don't agree, if I don't agree with, if I don't like something that you like, at least I can see why you like it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever tried something that someone really likes, but you just don't like it? And they're expecting you to give them like feedback or to post about it.
Um,
Tell the story, Ryan. You're nodding your head. So go ahead.
yeah,
I
you got.
don't. I don't. This is a house that I haven't. I've only talked about this in like side conversations, so I'm not going to even name the house out here. But somebody nicely sent me a rather rare, very expensive artisanal fragrance, and they were so excited for me to try it. It was something they treasured very dearly. It was something that seemed like something I would love, and I thought it was one of the worst constructed perfumes I've ever smelled. Like not even exaggerating, but just like
Yeah.
in my mind was like this smells like it was put together by somebody who didn't know what they were doing with perfume.
Amateur.
Yeah, just like amateur mess of a perfume. And I felt bad for that on two levels. One, it's like I always feel particularly bad with an independent artisanal perfume, especially if you're going to put something out on YouTube, right? Because there aren't a lot of reviews of these houses to begin with in the scheme of things, and I never want to be the person that's like, the first thing that people Google first thing that comes up when somebody Googles that perfume in
Yeah.
particular. I'm very sensitive to that. If there's like a lot of discourse going on about a perfume, I don't mind being like the one negative voice in the crowd. But if you're like the only voice, that's hard. But also it was very hard for this person who very nicely sent me something that was, in terms of like cash value, fairly
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
To me, very hard for me to know how to quite respond to that. Obviously, it was very sweet of that person, and I greatly appreciated it. But that was, yeah, I don't know. Like that's the tricky thing about people sharing perfume with other people. And I have pretty thick skin about that. So like if I introduce people to other perfumes and they don't like it, it's like it's fine with me. I don't really care. But people can be very sensitive about that in this community because perfume is such an intimate thing, I think, that a lot of us spend a lot of time with and identify with very closely, because it's something you wear. It's not something that is very distant from us in the way of like a picture you hang on your wall or something like that.
And so much depends on what you have access to, right? Like if you don't have access to a lot of stuff and you're buying, whatever's out there, for me to say, well, it's just not very good or it's boring or something, like, well, you're gonna choose the best of what you have. Like,
right. And I think that's and one of the reasons I'm typically drawn to reviewers who actually have very different perspectives than my own, and would not necessarily be like an echo chamber for me, but would help me think about perfumes that I might otherwise like not pay attention to, and bring those to my attention and say, hey, there's something interesting here, and be able to articulate what's interesting about that perfume. Because I think that's the nice thing about the better perfume reviewers in the world, is like the ability to make a perfume that I might otherwise have not thought very interesting suddenly very interesting to me. And I think that's really cool. I wonder who's
I feel like
No.
people that are long tenured are not that sensitive.
I was going to say the same thing, and it's a really good point, because like being on social media, specifically in fragrance related social media, you get to see a lot of opinions and read a lot of opinions, hear a lot of opinions, and I totally understand when you know that someone is kind of new to this hobby, and they're excited about smelling something that maybe you're not that excited about. That's like, I totally empathize with that, because I was that person several years ago. There are so many perfumes that I smelled early on that I no longer own or wear anymore, that I used to get so excited about, and I totally get it. And this and the more experienced you are, like for me, my biggest challenge now is that smelling samples can become a bit of a chore, because like after you smell enough, you start to go, oh well, this just smells like that, and this reminds me of this, and and it's very rare. It's very rare. Like I've mentioned this before, when at Exance, when you spend 3 days smelling so many perfumes, like maybe 1 out of 20 was like an exciting new sniff to me. I mean, it's probably like a really bad environment to do that in, like in such a condensed and sort of pressurized space. But like they're really like things that are really unique and exciting in perfume come around less often the more that you smell, if that makes sense.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think I think that's also why the people who tend to be like more tenured in this tend to, like, you see this over the time, like people who stay in this area a lot either go one of two directions. Either they kind of like they veer off and like actually like say like, okay, I've spent enough time with all this weird stuff. I'm actually going to just go tilt back more towards like what a quote unquote like mainstreamy stuff that I actually really like, or like they just spiral off into kind of like weirder and weirder scents, chasing the high of like smelling something very new and unique. And I think part of the other sensitivity to it is just the economics of it, right? When you're first getting into this hobby and you spend your first like let's say like you spent your first $250 on a $250 bottle of perfume. That perfume represents something different to you than it does for those of us who have like, kind of been at this a while and have invested a decent chunk of our income over the years into this. And it's like, okay, well, here's yet another bottle. When you're first doing that, like that, what that can signify in terms of like luxury and like you kind of attaining something can be very precious. So it's like, I see why people could be very defensive about that. Like, oh, I just bought this bottle of Tom Ford perfume and somebody's coming at me and telling me it's overrated and crap, can feel pretty rough because you just maybe spent $300 on that bottle of perfume, and that feels a lot to you, and that was a very precious purchase for you. And then for somebody to say that no, you actually didn't buy something that was very high quality, you got swindled, is a pretty bitter pill to swallow. And that's why I try to stay away from that kind of rhetoric in general.
And I think this is where a little bit of emotional intelligence and a bit of self awareness with how you communicate that to people helps a lot, because like, you should be able to give your opinion and not offend people. And like like some people need to learn that, but and then some people just think their opinion is better anyway.
True. But I think the other part of it is also, it's a two-way street. Sometimes you just have to be comfortable liking what you like and just accept that, especially in the world of fragrance, not everybody's going to like what you're wearing. And even if you're wearing what I think is the very best perfume, you can walk into a room and somebody might absolutely think it's the worst thing they've smelled all day. So, I don't know.
And wearing something yourself is different than smelling it in the air on somebody else, right? That is always like an interesting experience, because something that I might not want to buy smells great on other people.
Yeah, and that's happened to me. I think I've mentioned this before. I'm like talking about something that I kind of think is a bit trashy, but it's Paco Rabanne Invictus, and I hate that on my skin. I've smelled that on other people and gone, oh, what are you wearing? That smells really, really good. They go, oh yeah, it's just Invictus. Well,
sometimes it's just nice to smell something.
Yeah.
Like anything.
See, maybe Cheap Imitation cries because Rich Mitch doesn't like Uncut Gem, and I've got to say I didn't like Uncut Gem either, Cheap Imitation. So I hope I don't add to your tears. But if you love it, that's great.
I still need to smell it. I've been curious about Uncut Gem, given the somewhat polarized reception about it. I mean, yeah.
It's not an actual bad smelling perfume.
Yeah.
It's just like my first impressions, I likened it to a shower gel. Like it's a kind of fresh shower gel smell to me. I didn't love the dry down on it either. It actually got worse as it dried down on my skin. So the best part of it was the opening for me, but it just wasn't like. I mean, it probably wasn't even something I would expect on the shelf of a designer department store brand. Like, and for it to come from Frederic Malle was a bit of a shock, to be honest.
But what if you were thinking it was just coming from Estee Lauder?
Well, I wouldn't have bought it, but it was. No. I would have expected it. I would have expected it. Yeah.
But that is what's happening, right? Because Estee Lauder owns the brand now, so you're getting Estee Lauder. You're not really. I mean, are you getting Frederic Malle? We don't know. Like, are we really getting Tom Ford anymore?
But we're being sold. I mean, Frederic Malle is something. The idea of Frederic Malle is something that is sold to us. I don't know. I have no idea how much control he has still over what's being created, what's being put out. Like compared to what kind of control Estee Lauder would impose on them. But I have no idea about that.
I wonder how well Frederic Malle actually sells in general. I would be very curious about that. Obviously, it's something, like is held in high regard in our particular fragrance circles, and it's available in high-end department stores and is usually given very nice presentation. But I would be really curious it's hard to find statistics like this. I'm always interested in like sales statistics, how well Frederick Mall actually
So
sells
it
bottles.
sells well in Canada, and I just know that because I asked the people that work there, I'm like, are people buying this stuff? And there are just like fans, and in particular, you know, there the Middle Eastern collection, like Dawn and Night, the Moon, I think. So those, like, the store here gets just a few of them every once in a while, and they sell out immediately. Like there's people on a wait list, and they don't even have to try to sell it. It just is sold the second that it comes in. So I think it does okay. Like I don't think they're one of the lines that are really hurting. You know what I mean? But going back to like how much control like Frederick Mell would have over the brand, I just know from like the beauty area, like there was Bobbi Brown who sold her brand to Estee Lauder, signed a non-compete, and she was first creative director and then she left. But her non-compete is over now. So she's spoken here and there a little bit about what it was like, and other people have too. But she kind of says like it's never what you think it's going to be. Like they promise you so much, but it's never the same as running your own brand. So you
Yeah.
are kind of like, you know, you are giving in a little bit, and they are taking what's worked for your brand and then sharing it with all their other brands too. So it doesn't feel like your brand is really offering anything special anymore because it's being offered everywhere. So I'm sure some of that is.
It's interesting. It's interesting you said that because so one thing I have theorized a few different times, and I had a video where I even talked about this a few different times where they're not up right now, but you could see it felt like Estee Lauder over the past 5-6 years was using Tom Ford briefs that didn't quite make it across the line at Tom Ford, and then releasing them under their other designer houses. So like you were getting like Tom Ford DNA that felt very much like a mock-up of something that Tom Ford might have like eventually passed on under other Estee Lauder brands. And it was kind of interesting to see how much it felt like Estee Lauder was less of like distinct brands and more of just like different names on the same big cluster of like fragrance styles. And even sometimes you saw them very intentionally like release quote unquote like clones of fragrances down at lower ends, like one of the big ones being Max Velvet Teddy, which I thought was a superior version of Tobacco Vanille, but was released at a much lower price point. And so you saw this kind of like very interesting thing going on with Estee Lauder. And you see, I think you increasingly see it with a lot of these conglomerates. And it's kind of this interesting thing as a consumer where we're given the illusion of choice, but it's really all the same people pulling the strings behind the curtain.
That's an interesting point that Rich made there with the use of I guess the resources are like have to be shared as well. I would imagine.
Yeah.
Just on Tom Ford, have I made this up, or has he left? Has Tom Ford actually left Tom Ford?
Yeah, he's named his successor.
Right.
I think there's still technically some transition period a little bit, but Tom Ford has pretty much said he's going to go off and exclusively make movies at this point.
Okay.
And and take his billions and walk. And good for him. It's good money if you can make it, I guess. Yeah, that brand has been running on fumes for a while for me, and it feels like it kind of started to lose steam. I mean, almost exactly a decade ago, it felt kind of like they started just throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck. And some of it still was pretty good. It's just like it was the hit miss ratio really started to become pretty scattershot.
It's interesting when brands lose specific, like very important people behind. Like I don't feel that Amouage has maintained the quality since Christopher Chong left as creative director. Like from just only from what I see released, what I've smelled since then. So I mean, obviously people are important to brands if especially when they've had such an influential part in creating their their pillars, you know, for especially for perfume. So, but I do agree, like with Tom Ford, even while he was there, maybe he was just phoning it in the last few years, and it's not what I like. Tom Ford isn't what I first smelled with Tom Ford. Like when I was, you know, like I smelled oud wood and tobacco vanille and Tuscan leather, noir de noir, like when they were kind of probably not long after they'd first been released. And I thought that whole initial line was amazing. And it's kind of just sort of coasted along and sort of taken a nosedive, I think, in the last few years.
Yeah, I'd heard chatter behind the scenes that Estee Lauder wasn't happy with the sales of a lot of the Tom Ford private blend stuff in particular, and I think that's why you saw such a dramatic shift in strategy. Like things very curious started happening. Like this initial move of like, okay, we're going to take private blend fragrances and then like release them a few years later at a lower price point as a mass market release is kind of a very curious strategy to see if you're not really trying to play with the market and makes is landing with consumers. So yeah, kind of a weird thing there. And I also agree about Amouage not being quite what it was. Though I think also Amouage at this point in time is struggling with like just a lot of competition that wasn't quite there in the way than like when Interlude Man first came out and like made everybody's like stand back and be like, oh, what is this? It's so like if you smell, it's been a bit since I've smelled the newer Amouage stuff. There's been stuff released that I haven't smelled, but like Amouage Material, for example, which is a perfectly nice like woody amber kind of creation, and it's perfectly objectively very nice. It's just there's so much like it out there today that it's hard to say that it's differentiating itself. And I think that's part of the problem in the market right now too, is just like every house is now competing with every other house, and like all the established genres are so well established that like Tom Ford couldn't come out with a new Tuscan leather today.
No.
Like you couldn't come out with like a new version of a leather right now that would just like blow everybody's minds and do it. It's just like it's too hard right now to do that. So I think that's the other piece of it. Like a lot of the Amouage scents, like I don't know if we could experiment with time and try to say like, oh, would Interlude Man, if released today, do something for people, or would people say like, oh, okay, yeah, it's another scent and like let's keep moving on? I don't know.
Yeah, we can't create a vacuum, right? Of like, let's just release it without any competition and see if people like it. Like that's just not gonna happen.
Right.
Although it is interesting when I don't know, I sometimes like take perfume into work and like have everybody smell something that I like, and people are not usually blown away by it.
No.
I don't know, not usually. They usually don't like it because it's just too challenging. So, and that doesn't deter me. I'll still be like, well, I just bought a bottle, so I don't care.
I mean, I expect, like, I would never bring in perfume stuff to my work. I would expect that a lot of my stuff would just be like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Interesting.
Yeah. Kind of interesting or different. Because I mean, we see what sells, and it's not typically I don't know how it is in particular in Australia, but I would imagine it's not totally different than how it is over here. But like if you go into like my local Ulta Beauty and go to the fragrance section, I've described it as like a fragrance desert in there, because like the most interesting masculine you'll find there is like Spice Bomb or like Sauvage Elixir or something like that.
Spice Bomb Extreme.
Right. Like that might be the good one that you would take away from that selection. And Spice Bomb Extreme is like, in the scheme of things, like it's okay, but like it's not. I mean, no offense to all the YouTubers who still like hype and treasure it after all these years, but I think in the scheme of like vanillic, spicy tobacco fragrances that I've tried, it's like solidly mid tier in my book. You know, I don't know. Like, it's just like people generally haven't smelled things like that. I think they also have trouble associating it with the idea of perfume. Like, a lot of these smells are things that they might recognize, but the idea of like, oh, I could smell like that is like a different, a different leap.
Hey guys, look at the time. We've actually hit 2 hours, and it feels like 10 minutes. And I am a big fan of limiting the length of live streams, because bad things can happen when they go over 2 hours. But does anyone in the chat have any questions for Henna or Ryan or myself? Because otherwise I'll let everyone get on with their evening in North America, and I need to have breakfast as well. So otherwise, thank you. Thanks, Catch My Whiff, for the super chats. I really appreciate that. I never expect that, but that's a very sweet thing to do. Henna and Ryan, it was a really nice pleasure to have you guys on the stream.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting.
Well, let's do this again soon, and I'm happy to do it on your channels if you want.
Absolutely. This was an absolute pleasure. I love every time I get to talk to both of you. So
cool.
Thanks so much for having me.
And I'll be more unfiltered on your channels as well, because I was only worried about, you know, being blocked.
Oh, sure. But if you take my channel, it's fine. I see how it is.
Yeah. I'm only kidding.
Thanks to everyone in the chat too.
Yeah. Yeah. Loved reading everyone's comments. Thank you. And you were all very well behaved. I appreciate that. All right. So I'm gonna end the stream there. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your nights and days wherever you are. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye, guys.